Mr. Johnny McGonigal covers Pitt football for the Post-Gazette. He's on the Nemacolin fan hotline. And Johnny, I just got to tell you, this whole thing doesn't feel real right now. It feels like we're living in some sort of alternate universe. If you would have told me in late August that Pitt would be favored at home against Clemson and that Kenny Pickett would be in some people's top 6 for the Heisman Trophy, I think I would have been mildly surprised at that, to say the least.
Joe, and let me add one other caveat, and that they would have lost at home to Western Michigan.
Well, that wouldn't have surprised me.
But factor that into where they are today.
And that they would have lost to Western Michigan and still be favored at home against Clemson. What's going on here, Johnny? Is this line to be believed? What is it, 3 points right now?
3.5, I saw.
Yeah. I saw it was as high as 4 earlier in the week, and it came down to 3.5. Look, judging by what Clemson has done this season, if you take the Clemson name off it, you swap their jerseys out for something plain, and it's not that Clemson jersey, and you watch what they've done this season, I'm surprised it's not bigger. I really am surprised it's not bigger. I get the coaching staff, and obviously they've had a ton of success, winning 6 straight ACC titles, 6 straight playoff appearances. But this Clemson offense has been very bad this season, like very bad. So I'm surprised, honestly, the line isn't a little bit more. And I think Vegas is still giving a lot of respect to Clemson. We saw last week they were 2 touchdown favorites against Syracuse, and they barely won that. It was the same for the Boston College game. So it is crazy, though, that we're sitting here. Like you said, I mean, I mentioned earlier this week that if you told me before the season that Pitt would be where it is right now, and the ACC would be where it is right now, I don't know if I believe you.
Well, I got to ask the question, how big exactly is this game? Because didn't Narduzzi allow you to talk to the players this week, right? I mean, it's a Penn State game. He wouldn't allow you to talk to the players, right? So how big of a damn game is it?
I think it's the biggest game of Narduzzi's tenure so far, going into it, in terms of what can come after it and, the expectations. This Clemson team is very beatable, and if you beat them, you get to 6-1, and then you get Miami at home, and Miami has been bad this season. You go at Duke, who's been bad this season. You get North Carolina, who's been a massive disappointment this season. I mean, this ACC right now is for the taking, and Pitt is the favorite right now. Across both divisions, they're the favorite to win the conference. They're the clear and obvious favorite in the Coastal. If you beat Clemson, I mean, you start thinking, really, I mean, it's ACC title. And I think that given the expectations, given how this season has started, Western Michigan game even thrown in there, the way that they've responded from that game, the way that Kenny Pickett's playing, I mean, if he goes out there and throws 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, he's going to be one of the top 2 or 3 guys in the Heisman conversation, not the top 6, 7, 8. So I really think this is the biggest game so far of Narduzzi's 6.5-year tenure.
John, I was being facetious when I said how big of a game is it, but I mean, I just wanted to. Has Narduzzi has he been different this week? Has he been tried to maintain the same thing that he's done all year, one game at a time? Because the Penn State stuff, he went into a shell before those games.
Yeah, I remember that. It's been business as usual on the South Side in terms of player interviews, coaching interviews, all that kind of stuff. Narduzzi spoke to us Monday at his press conference and Thursday as he normally would. And we met with players after practice Tuesday, Wednesday. And talking to those players, like, they understand the magnitude of the game. But at the same time, too, it's an older group. We talked to Johnny Patrician, who's a 7th-year senior. We talked to Kenny Pickett, who's been in these, has been around the block, obviously, for quite some time here in college football. These guys know that it's a massive game. They feel it on campus. They feel it within their locker room that the players are maybe have a little bit more energy for this game than other games, which is understandable. But they also know that they can't get too hyped up for this thing. Obviously there's 5 more games after this. But they got to focus on the game. They got to focus on Clemson.
Johnny McGonigal of the Post-Gazette. So when I look at Narduzzi's defense, I still see that the idea is to put heavy pressure on the quarterback, no matter what you have to do to get there, and leaving your corners out on an island. They were susceptible against Western Michigan, a little bit of that, a lot to RPOs. That's what Clemson does. And I wonder if that will eventually be the downfall of this team. Does Clemson have what it takes to expose Pitt's secondary and or to run those RPOs the way Western Michigan did? I'm sorry, I can't get Western Michigan out of my mind.
Look, that's fair. I think defensively they've come a long way from that game. You know, Virginia Tech tried to do some RPO stuff, and it just didn't work at all. But then again, I wasn't high on Virginia Tech's offense at all going into that game last week. You ask if Clemson, if they can run the RPOs and hurt this Pitt defense, they can. It's what they do. It's what Tony Elliott, the offensive coordinator, has done. But you know what? They've had a lot of success with that over the years when they had Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. DJ Uyunglele is not making the right decisions. He's not accurate this season. He's not the quarterback that we saw when he filled in as a starter last season against Notre Dame and Boston College. When receivers are open, he's overthrowing them. And when receivers, are when he's putting it on the money, his receivers are letting him down. I mean, Justin Ross has just not been that good this season, not as advertised. Ngata, who is their leading receiver, is reportedly out here. Some Clemson reporters reporting that he has COVID. So that's a big development in this game. So I think the Clemson offense, they're as talented as can be, right? They got the 5 stars. They got all the talent in the world, but it hasn't come together yet. It's been the big but so far in the ACC is, just waiting for Clemson to pop, waiting for them to hit. And it hasn't happened yet. They haven't clicked yet.
Wait, Johnny, who did you say? I missed who you said that Clemson reporters think might have COVID.
Joseph Ngata, their leading receiver.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, a leading receiver in air bubbles because air quotes. Their passing game has not been obviously that good this season. And Uyunglele only has 4 touchdown passes. So, but still, I mean, when you look at an offense that has struggled and you take one of their big playmakers off him, he was the guy who caught the acrobatic touchdown at Syracuse last Friday night. So if you take a guy like that off that offense that's already struggling, I don't know. I think Pitt's. I understand what you're saying, Joe, with the press coverage and the corners on an island, and that has burned Pitt in the past, and obviously RPOs have burned Pitt in the past. But I think this front 7 is going to be able to create enough chaos, enough pressure at the mesh point against an offensive line that's had 4 combinations in the first 6 games, and they're going to be missing their starting center as well for back-to-back games. So I think Pitt's front 7 can get the job done.
John, getting back to Pickett for a second, I got to think, obviously for his Heisman stuff, it's important, but just for his mental state, he's had 2 horrible games against Clemson, correct? Obviously in the championship game, I think he had 4 completions for 8 yards. Now that's a long time ago, but even last year, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. It's got to mean a lot to him, I would think, just from a personal standpoint, beyond the Heisman Trophy talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in that game last year, he was hobbled, obviously, with that ankle injury that he sustained at Boston College and had surgery and then ended up playing through pain down the stretch. But, I mean, 3 interceptions within his first 9 throws down at Clemson last year. So this is a game that he's had circled for a while. And when I was talking to him before the season, I was talking to Mark Whipple for a story on Kenny before the year back in June. And Mark Whipple told me, he's like, if Kenny left, the first game that they, being NFL scouts, would have thrown on tape or thrown on their TVs would have been the Clemson game because it's, that big opponent. And Kenny did not play well last year. He would be the first one to tell you that. They rebounded. They did some things offensively that they felt that they could build on, but it was not a good outing. So, yeah, this is what he came back for. He came back to boost his NFL stock. He came back to win an ACC championship, and he came back to playing these big games. And I don't think you're going to get any bigger this season than Pitt Clemson at Heinz Field this Saturday.
Well, Ron and I were a little dubious on the Pitt Virginia Tech game as to how well Pitt would do. You were positive they would win and win big, Johnny. So it sounds like you think they're going to win again. Do you think they'll win big?
I do. I have them 31-16, Pitt winning. And again, I will say this. If Clemson clicks offensively, and by clicking, I mean if they go ahead and are able to hit on those RPOs and score 30-plus points, they'll win this game. I don't see that happening because it hasn't happened yet. So it's like, I'm one of those guys where it's like, prove it to me, right? And they haven't proved it yet this season. DJ Uyunglele has not proved it. Tony Elliott, the offensive coordinator, has not proved it. So until Clemson does it, I'm not going to assume that they can do it, if that makes sense. So that's the thinking that goes into that.
We were talking earlier about our colleague Adam Bittner had a story about maybe Pitt and Penn State playing in the Peach Bowl. I understand you have kind of poo-pooed that. Is that correct?
Well, no, look, I saw that, and the Peach Bowl CEO is a local guy, and he said that it would be tremendous for the two schools to play in the Peach Bowl. I just think it's pretty far-fetched in that you would have to have both Penn State and Pitt in that position to play in an at-large bowl, because that's really the only bowl that they could play each other in the postseason this year. I mean, the Pinstripe Bowl is another option, but at this point, I don't think either of those teams will be that low in the pecking order. So it's almost Peach Bowl or bust. And honestly, if I'm a Pitt fan, I don't know why I would want to play Penn State. If you're having that kind of a special season, I know it's not up to the Pitt fans what bowl game they go to, but if you're having a special season, you win the ACC, you get to the New Year's Six Bowl. Do you really want that season to be defined by last game of the season, a rivalry game? Like,
yes.
I don't know.
How about if
I want that to be defined by
John?
Penn State.
If you win it, John, it adds to the memorable season.
Ron mentioned the same thing earlier, that maybe some Pitt people won't want to play the game, and I just couldn't get with that thinking. If they would think that way. Come on, you duck Penn State after a great season. You wouldn't want your team to play them. That'd be the first team I'd want to play. But maybe you're right. I don't know.
I'm not saying Pitt would duck Penn State. That's not what I'm saying. And look, I don't think Penn State would want to play Pitt in a New Year's Six Bowl game either.
Why?
Because why would they? I mean, it's a game that
why wouldn't they?
You've played Pitt 4 times already from 2016 to 2019. The point of these bowl games, the point of these New Year's Six bowl games, at least for me, you play different teams. These are intriguing matchups you won't normally see.
This one.
Yeah, you don't normally see
Pitt,
Penn State, John.
I don't know, guys. I'm just not on board with it. I just think that Pitt would be better off playing in a high-profile SEC team in a Peach Bowl, and Penn State would be better off playing in the Fiesta Bowl, playing a different team. I don't know. That's just not a part of it's not a part of my thinking. I think that Pitt's season, especially if they were to go 10-3, and then they lose to Penn State. And I'm not saying that they would lose to Penn State, but if they lose to Penn State, that season's soured. It is.
But to me, that's like saying if I go 10-2 and then face a really good team in a bowl game and I get blown out, then all people remember is, don't you want to put that to risk? Don't you want to put your really good team on display and risk it all in a big bowl game or a game against Penn State? You might be right that people might be thinking that way. I just can't imagine it, though. I sure wouldn't be thinking that way for one of my teams. I'd want that more than anything. If I think this Pitt team is really good, who would I rather put a really good Pitt team against than Penn State?
They also played 2 years ago. I don't know, guys.
We're not going to convince them, Joe.
No, you're not. I'm sorry. I get the interest. I get the rivalry. I understand it. These teams played 2 years ago. And for me, the point of these bowls is obviously to get an attractive bowl game, but to play different teams and have unique opportunities. And for me, these two teams, Kenny Pickett played against Sean Clifford 2 years ago. I don't necessarily need to see it again.
Wow. I would be craving to see it again, given the fact that both quarterbacks are in a way, way different place than they were. So what would be an intriguing Peach Bowl matchup that could match the hype from the Pitt side of Penn State?
Ole Miss. If you get these two offenses down there, Lane Kiffin, Pat Narduzzi, Matt Corral versus Kenny Pickett, that sounds like fun to me. Something like that. I don't know, guys.
No, I hear you. I hear you. And your opinion is your opinion on what you would want to see. But surely you can't make the argument that Pitt fans at large would rather see a Pitt Ole Miss bowl game than a Pitt Penn State bowl game?
No, look, I get it. I get that there is obviously a group of fans that would want to see Pitt Penn State on both sides.
All of them.
I don't know about all of them. I don't know about that, Joe. I don't know if all of Pitt fans would want to see Penn State, would want to play Penn State in a bowl game. I don't know.
Ron, what do you think from the Pitt side?
I think Pitt fans would want to play Penn State. I don't think Penn State necessarily would want to play Pitt. Pitt has more to gain by playing Penn State than Penn State does by playing Pitt, John.
I don't know. I think it's different when it comes to regular season versus a bowl game. I don't know. I would just want something different.
Now he's got. I respect his opinion. I'm talking about you, John, because you've been involved with both schools, right? You used to cover Penn State, didn't you?
I did.
I mean, you've been involved in both schools, I guess. I don't know. I just would love to see. I would love to see. I would love to see Pitt Penn State a lot more than Pitt Ole Miss. I can tell you that.
That's fair. You're entitled to your opinion, Ron. That's fine.
And you as well. You as well, my friend.
I'm reeling here, Johnny. You put me in the corner. I feel like I don't even know any boxers anymore, so I'll go back to the 70s. I feel like I'm Joe Frazier against George Foreman. You just knocked me out. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do.
Were you not expecting this?
I didn't know the conversation would turn to this, but I definitely wasn't expecting that take. I respect it, but I just wasn't expecting it. I'm reeling in the corner over here. Ron's looking at me. I don't know what to do.
You know, John, they could play Ole Miss in the parking lot, and if I had something better to do, I'm not sure I would watch that game. It just does nothing for me. It does, although
Ron,
these bowl games,
Matt Corral against Kenny Pickett.
I'd rather watch Sean Clifford against Kenny Pickett. That's just me. We can agree to disagree.
That's fine.
This is the first time. I like this. This is Johnny with an edge, Ron. We haven't found this Johnny yet, have we?
Well, Ron, we're gonna be in the press box together on Saturday, so we'll be able to discuss this further.
I promise you, my friend, we will.
Johnny, great work. And by the way, if people want to read an awesome story today, and I meant to ask you about this, and I will right now very briefly. 5 years ago, Pitt Clemson, you talked to Chris Blewett. You talked to a bunch of people from that game. It's a great story at postgazette.com. I imagine it was fun to do, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even getting to catch up with James Conner, Nathan Peterman, Scott Orndorff, Salim Brightwell, these guys. They still remember that game 5 years on. For them, it doesn't feel that long ago, too. So it's a fun story to write, and I appreciate you guys plugging that.
Absolutely, man. Thank you, Johnny.
Yep.
He ends with a yup. I think we broke him, Ron. The happy-go-lucky Johnny McGonigal is broken.
Pitt Ole Miss just doesn't do a lot for me.
Me neither. Maybe he's right. I don't know. Should we put it to a test here?
I mean, I think his point about it's not going to happen is a really good one. The chances are very minimal, but that doesn't mean what. And I'm older. You know, I saw somebody sent me a note saying, anybody under 40 doesn't care about Pitt Penn State anymore. It's not like the older people that grew up with that rivalry, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. But for me, I'm over 40, and I'd love to see it. It's one of my favorite sporting events of all time. That's why
I still think what you said before is true. Even the younger Pitt people the students have inherited the hatred of Penn State. They chant it at games. It's all over the place.
I don't think Penn State fans are that way, though. I don't think.
No, they're not toward Pitt. They're not.
I don't think they're that way. And I mean, maybe more so for Pitt's standpoint than Penn State's. But I mean, I walked out of that Beaver Stadium that last game thinking, and I mean, I said I'll never see this again. And it was hard. It was hard, like walking out of Madison Square Garden after my last Big East tournament thinking,
right,
I'll never get there again, and it hurts.
If you polled the first 15,000 Pitt fans who went into the stadium tomorrow and said, would you rather play Ole Miss or Penn State in a bowl game, of those 15,000, what percentage would say Penn State?
Over 40, 100%. Under 40, maybe not 100, but still a significant amount, I would think.
I think over, under, it doesn't. I still think the hatred for Penn State is there, and the rivalry lives. I mean, it was just 2 years ago that these students saw it too. It is. It's
for
a lot.
4 years.
I think if you took a poll and said, would you rather go to the ACC championship game and play Clemson, or would you rather simply have a game in a parking lot against Penn State, and half of them would say Penn State at least.
I would think so, but not the other way around.
No. But if you ask the other way around, would you rather play Akron, Buffalo, or Virginia Tech or Pitt? They'd say Pitt, Penn State. I still think that game does mean something.
You got to get your wins. You got to
get your home games and your wins. But let's be clear about, you asked before, why don't they petition the administration? Because all the administration would say back to them is this is about money. We need home games. We don't want to go to Pitt.
Right. That's fair.
I'm reeling, Ron. I don't know where to go from here. I have a bunch of hockey questions for you. May I ask those? Yeah. Although if people want to call in, and I think they're calling horse right now, we should capitalize on this. 412-928-1450. 9370. You can text us on the Egger, Snyder and Associates fan text line.
Johnny was a little.
Did you hear the end?
He was
the
a little
at the end.
He was a little heated over that.
You may be facing somebody in a press box tomorrow, Ron. Listen, the kid he changed his name to Johnny.
Won't be the first time
He could be Hannibal Lecter for all we know.
Won't be the first time I've been confronted in a press box.
Hannibal McGonigal, Ron. There may be a whole different personality here with Johnny.